actually took just about their top person and they put him into the offices of the Attorney General of New York, and then also the office of the DA Bragg's office, to make sure the case is brought viciously against their political opponent. And it's a shame. It's a shame. Businesses will not come to New York because of it. They actually, in the case of Engoron, they used a consumer frauds case, never used before for a thing like this. And not only were my numbers correct, and again, this was a generality. All you need is a general, but I had really good numbers, but they were very conservative, very much on the low side. And the judge knew that. And the judge ruled a fine against me, the likes of which has never even been heard of. The businesses will never come to this state as long as that is able to be held up, because we won that trial so conclusively. We had an expert witness said that President Trump's financial, this was an expert witness from the Stern School of Business, one of the most highly respected people in the country, as an expert witness. He said, to the best of my remembering, it's a big statement, but he said, this is perhaps the best financial statement I've ever seen. But the judge made me pay like a $400 million fine. This is a consumer fraud statement. Think of it. Consumer frauds case that they made it in. The judge refused to give it over to the commercial division where they could understand things, and they would have dismissed it immediately because this case had no merit whatsoever. The judge wanted to settle the case for a very much smaller amount. And I said, I'm not going to settle. I didn't do anything wrong. But he would have settled the case for a much smaller amount. He wanted to settle it for a much more. We had numerous meetings in his office for a fraction of the number that he gave. That was one of the interesting things. I figured that the worst that you could do is what he wanted to settle for, which was a very small number by comparison. And then he just came out with this number. This was a coordination with the DOJ. And the other case that you know about and you've been hearing about, which is same kind of a thing, also in coordination, is the Bragg case. And they actually wanted to put them together in New York. They wanted to put the DA case together with the Attorney General case, but they both wanted credit. They couldn't understand, they both wanted credit, so they had their own cases. And it's very corrupt in New York, and very, very corrupt. It's a very corrupt place and doing very badly. But when people see what happened, and when they see, I've had so many calls from business people saying, this is just terrible. Today, there was a story about somebody in Southern District who's highly respected, knocking the hell out of both of those cases, say it's an embarrassment they were allowed to be brought. And I'm going to write out a list of things from Alan Dershowitz, Andrew McCarthy, Greg Jarrett, some of the greatest people, all legal scholars, great people, Jonathan Turley, like 10 highly respected, the most highly respected people that quote Calabrese, Judge Calabrese, that quote on cases. And shockingly, they can't even believe it. They said this case should not have been allowed to be brought. And that's about pretty much both cases, but it's about the case that we have in front of Judge Mershon. That case is a disgrace. Should have never been allowed. I did nothing wrong. And he took a non-existent, expired, long expired by the statute of limitations, misdemeanor. He made it into 34 or something more than that counts of felony. Nobody can even believe it. Over nothing. And if you look at that case, he wouldn't allow it. That whole thing was done by an attorney. I had nothing to do with it. That was done by an attorney, a sleazebag named Michael Cohen. And he did the whole thing and you're allowed to have reliance on attorney. It's called reliance on attorney. You have a reliance on attorney. Attorney's allowed to do things. And all it was is a non-disclosure agreement with somebody that said nothing happened, by the way. I might add that. If you don't mind, I'll add that. We have a statement, nothing happened. And he got a non-disclosure agreement. He did it on his own, and this judge refused to allow us to use that as a defense, the attorney-client defense, which is very standard. Other people have never heard that you're not allowed to use it. But he's the one that did it because I was running for president and running the country. He's the one that did it. So all of these cases are a disgrace. But the case that we had today downtown, I wish we could have mentioned the dress. Again, got the idea from Monica Lewinsky, but it was negative, wasn't allowed to be used. I wish we could have mentioned many of the other things, and I certainly wish we could have gone to CNN and got the outtakes, what's called the outtakes. What did Anderson Cooper tell her during the commercial? I'd love to find that out. So that's where we are. We have a very corrupt system of laws, but in that system we have some very good judges also, and I think in the end the good judges will prevail. And I hope Democrat-appointed judges can see a scam like this where somebody just makes up a story, probably out of Law and Order. I don't know, she made it up out of somewhere, but check out the Law and Order episode that we're talking about. Make up a story, and I end up getting sued. And by the way, the punishment is like $89 million and wouldn't have two cases. It should have been one case. But two cases is better because you get double bad publicity. We asked the judge, could you consolidate the cases? Same case. And he refused to do so. He wanted two cases. So two cases, two sets of lawyers, two everything. It's really, really very disgraceful. Let me talk about job numbers because, as you know, they just came out, and they're a basic disaster. They are really bad. You had numbers that are shocking. Native-born Americans, we lost 1.3 million jobs, while foreign-born Americans were able to take all of those jobs. So foreigners coming in illegally, largely illegally, into our country, took the jobs of native-born Americans. And I've been telling you that's what's going to happen, because we have millions and millions of people pouring into our country, many from prisons and jails and mental institutions and insane asylums. Traffickers, human traffickers, women traffickers, sex traffickers, which, by the way, that's the kind of thing that people should be looking at because it's horrible. And it's turning out that migrant crime is far worse than any crime that we've ever experienced. If you look at Aurora, Colorado, they're taking over the place. They took over buildings, and this is just the beginning. You haven't seen anything yet. You haven't seen any. They've allowed well over 20 million people, in my opinion. Other people say, well, it's only 13. No, it's much more than 20. I think it's much more than 20. Our country is being invaded because of incompetent people like Kamala that doesn't want to do one interview. She does one softball interview with CNN. Couldn't have been nicer. Dana Bash, you know what? I gained respect for Dana Bash and for Jake Tapper, because in my interview with Sleepy Joe, I thought they were very fair, actually. I was surprised. They were very fair. I'm going into very hostile territory shortly on a debate with ABC, George Slopadopoulos and that group. And ABC, I think, is the worst of everybody. I think they're the worst. They're the nastiest. They're as bad as you can be. They're worse than NBC, which is saying a lot. And we have something coming. And the reason I'm doing it is because that's the only one that she would do it with, because her best friend is the head of ABC or ABC News, and her husband's best friend is married to that one. So, and Donna Brazile is there. You remember the famous Donna Brazile? She gave Hillary Clinton the questions. You remember that? That was a little embarrassing. She got fired, I assume, for that. But now she's working at ABC. So I said, I'll do it anyway, because even if she knows the answers and knows the questions, I don't think she'll be very good. And this is not what our country wants. And I feel I have an obligation to do it. And she'd never stand up here like this and give a news conference and speak about what's happening with the weaponization of our justice system. This is the weaponization of justice at a level that nobody's ever seen in this country before. We've never seen it. You see it in third world countries, you see it in banana republics, but you don't see it in the United States of America, and it's a very sad thing. And I think I'm doing a great service by having gone through it and revealing it, because, you know, it came out with a indictment from the district attorney, which, again, just revealed today, and I hope you're going to do a story because it's a big story. The Southern District of New York was, and this is a very highly respected group of people. He said it was a disgrace that that case was brought. It was a disgrace that the case was brought in front of Mershon. The case is a disgrace. Should have never been brought. Should have never been brought. And the case in front of Judge Engoron, just in terms of the case itself, we had 4 or 5 overturns in the appellate division. I only hope the appellate division, for the good of New York, otherwise you just say, God save the state. For the good of New York, I hope that the appellate division will do what's right on that case, because that case was a scam. But every single one of these cases that I'm mentioning, they're all hoaxes and scams. No different than Russia, 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 Ukraine, 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 the impeachment hoax number 1, impeachment hoax number 2, all these things that we won. We won them all. But it takes time, it takes effort. And they're at it again. But this time, what they're doing is they're hitting us as hard as possible. You know, it's very interesting. It just brings to light the lawyer on the hoax that we're talking about now, having to do with E. Jean Carroll. She said, the way to defeat Trump is go after him civilly as often as possible, make his life miserable, sue him all the time, keep him in court, and let him spend a fortune. That's the lawyer I have in the E. Jean Carroll case. And that's exactly what they've done. The only thing I can say that's good about it is the public understands. And my poll numbers, I believe, are higher now than they would have been without it, because the public understands it's a hoax, it's a scam, it's a political witch hunt, and some of you should be ashamed of yourselves. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.
Mr. President.